In 1066, it took Harold Godwinson's army 5 days to march 250 miles to face William the Conqueror at Hastings. In 2023, a Russian hypersonic missile can travel that same distance in under 4 minutes. The evolution of warfare isn't just about bigger explosions or sharper swords. It's about humanity's relentless drive to project power across time and space with ever-increasing speed and precision. Welcome back to Timescope. Last episode, we followed humanity's greatest journey outward from Sputnik to the red plains of Mars. Today, we're exploring a different kind of human achievement, one measured not in light years conquered, but in the devastating ingenuity of our species when survival demands innovation. This is the story of weapons of war, from the ring of medieval steel to the silent terror of tomorrow's autonomous killing machines. Chapter 1: The Foundation of Steel and Stone. Let's begin where warfare transformed from mere brutality into engineering. Medieval battlefields weren't just about courage and strength. They were laboratories of applied physics, metallurgy, and psychological warfare that established principles still governing conflict today. Consider the medieval castle, humanity's first attempt at what we now call systems architecture in warfare. Caerphilly Castle in Wales, completed in 1290, wasn't just a fortified house. It was an integrated defensive network featuring concentric walls, water obstacles, overlapping kill zones, and supply management systems. The designers understood something profound. Warfare isn't won by individual heroics, but by superior logistics and coordinated systems. The weapons that challenged these fortresses reveal medieval innovation at its finest. The trebuchet wasn't simply a large catapult. It was a precision instrument exploiting counterweight physics to deliver 300-pound projectiles across 300 yards with devastating accuracy. But here's what's fascinating. Trebuchet crews understood trajectory calculations, wind compensation, and psychological warfare. They'd often launch diseased animal carcasses or captured heads to break enemy morale before the stone projectiles even began flying. Medieval metallurgy deserves special attention because it established the fundamental relationship between technology and military power that persists today. The transition from bronze to iron to steel wasn't just about harder weapons. It was about manufacturing capacity. Bronze required tin and copper, resources controlled by limited trade networks. Iron ore was abundant, but required advanced furnace technology. Steel demanded even more sophisticated techniques, but the result was weapons that could be mass-produced and standardized. The English longbow demonstrates how medieval weapons combined technology with human training systems. Drawing a war bow required 150 pounds of force. Archers began training in childhood, developing skeletal deformities that archaeologists can identify centuries later. At Agincourt in 1415, English longbowmen launched approximately 75,000 arrows in the opening minutes, creating what we'd now recognize as concentrated firepower delivered by a trained professional military class. But the real medieval innovation was in siege warfare, where attackers and defenders engaged in technological arms races that mirror modern military development. As walls grew higher and thicker, siege engines became more sophisticated. When defenders developed concentric fortifications, attackers created specialized assault equipment. The medieval period established the eternal military principle. Every defensive innovation spawns offensive countermeasures. Chapter 2: The Thunder of Change, Gunpowder's Revolution. The arrival of gunpowder in 14th century Europe didn't just add noise to battlefields, it fundamentally rewrote the social contract of warfare and power. This wasn't merely technological change, it was the beginning of warfare's democratization and the end of aristocratic military dominance. Early firearms were objectively inferior to existing weapons in almost every measurable way. A skilled archer could loose 12 aimed shots per minute. An early musketeer was lucky to fire twice. Crossbows were more accurate. Longbows had better range, and both were far more reliable in wet weather. Yet gunpowder weapons succeeded because they solved warfare's fundamental human resource problem. Training a longbow archer required 15 years of constant practice, creating physical deformations and demanding lifetime specialization. Training a musketeer required 15 days. Suddenly, peasant armies could field weapons that could kill knights, nobles, and trained professional soldiers with equal efficiency. The social implications were staggering. Military power was no longer tied to breeding, wealth, or lifetime training. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. Gunpowder weapons created terror through sensory assault. The thunderous crack, the flash, the acrid smoke, and most importantly, the invisible projectile that could kill at distances beyond sword or arrow range. Medieval accounts described horses panicking at the sound alone, breaking cavalry charges before contact was even made. Artillery transformed warfare even more dramatically than small arms. When Mehmed II brought his massive cannons to Constantinople in 1453, he wasn't just besieging a city. He was announcing the obsolescence of medieval defensive architecture. His Hungarian engineer, Orban, created cannons that fired 1,200-pound stone balls, shattering walls that had protected the Byzantine Empire for over a millennium. This forced complete reconceptualization of military architecture. The tall, impressive walls of medieval castles became liability magnets for cannon fire. Military engineers developed the Tres Italienne, star-shaped fortifications with low, thick walls and angled bastions that could deflect cannonballs and provide overlapping fields of fire. Renaissance fortification became a mathematical science involving geometry, ballistics, and materials engineering. The real genius of gunpowder warfare was standardization. Medieval weapons were essentially custom-crafted tools, each slightly different from the next. Gunpowder weapons required standardized ammunition, creating the first mass-production military supply chains. Disindustrialization of warfare would eventually lead to national armories, standardized equipment, and the logistical systems that define modern military operations. If you're finding this journey through military innovation as fascinating as I am, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're just getting started on this explosive timeline of human ingenuity. Chapter 3: America's Industrial Laboratory, the Civil War's Innovations. The American Civil War serves as history's first glimpse into industrial age warfare, where traditional tactics collided catastrophically with mass-produced weapons, creating a preview of the mechanized slaughter that would define the next century of conflict. The rifled musket represented the single most significant advancement in personal firearms since gunpowder itself. Where smoothbore muskets were accurate to perhaps 100 yards under ideal conditions, rifled weapons could kill reliably at 500 yards. The minia-ball, a conical bullet that expanded upon firing to engage the rifle's grooves, combined accuracy with stopping power that made traditional infantry tactics suicidal. Yet commanders on both sides continued employing Napoleonic tactics designed for smoothbore weapons with 100-yard effective ranges. The result was carnage on an unprecedented scale. At Antietam, over 23,000 casualties fell in a single day. At Gettysburg, 50,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing in 3 days of fighting. The human cost revealed the deadly lag between technological innovation and tactical adaptation. The war's real innovation lay in industrial production and logistics. The North's manufacturing capacity enabled production of 2.5 million rifles during the conflict, while the South struggled to equip their forces adequately. This wasn't merely about quantity. It was about standardization, interchangeable parts, and field maintenance. The Springfield Armory perfected mass production techniques that allowed damaged weapons to be repaired with standard components, maintaining unit effectiveness throughout extended campaigns. Railroad warfare emerged as a decisive factor, fundamentally changing military logistics and strategy. Troops could be transported hundreds of miles in days rather than weeks. Sherman's Atlanta campaign succeeded not just through tactical brilliance, but through railroad-enabled supply lines that allowed Union forces to operate deep in Confederate territory. The war introduced the concept of strategic infrastructure targeting. Destroying railroads, bridges, and industrial capacity became as important as defeating enemy armies. The Civil War also witnessed the first military applications of emerging technologies that would define future warfare. The telegraph enabled real-time communication between commanders and distant units. Observation balloons provided aerial reconnaissance. Ironclad warships like the Monitor and Merrimack demonstrated that armor could neutralize traditional naval gunnery. Photography documented battlefield reality, bringing war's brutality into civilian homes for the first time. Perhaps most significantly, the war established the principle of total warfare, conflict that engaged entire national economies and civilian populations. The Union's Anaconda Plan sought to strangle Confederate economic capacity through naval blockade. Sherman's March to the Sea targeted civilian infrastructure and morale. The distinction between combatants and non-combatants began to blur in ways that would characterize 20th century warfare. Chapter 4: The Great War's Mechanical Apocalypse. World War I represents the complete industrialization of human conflict, where emerging technologies combined to create killing efficiency that outstripped humanity's ability to adapt, producing 4 years of unprecedented slaughter that forever changed warfare's character. The machine gun epitomized industrial warfare's deadly mathematics. The Maxim gun could fire 600 rounds per minute, operated by a single soldier with minimal training. To understand this quantum leap in lethality, consider that a skilled medieval archer might lose 12 arrows per minute, while a Civil War soldier could fire perhaps 3 aimed rifle shots. The machine gun didn't just increase firepower, it created area denial, making entire sections of battlefield uninhabitable for human life. The Battle of the Somme provides the definitive demonstration of industrial weapons meeting pre-industrial tactics. British commanders, convinced that preliminary artillery bombardment had destroyed German defenses, ordered traditional infantry advances across open ground. German machine gunners, protected in deep concrete bunkers, emerged to mow down advancing troops. British forces suffered 60,000 casualties on July 1, 1916, the bloodiest single day in British military history. Chemical warfare introduced a new dimension of terror that transcended physical destruction. Chlorine gas, first deployed by German forces at Ypres in 1915, created panic beyond its actual killing power. Soldiers described the psychological horror of watching comrades drown in their own bodily fluids while breathing open air. The development of mustard gas made the situation exponentially worse, causing burns and blindness that could persist for weeks, creating long-term casualties that stressed enemy medical and supply systems. Artillery evolved into the war's most deadly weapon system, accounting for approximately 70% of all casualties. The preliminary bombardment before the Battle of Verdun involved 1,400 German guns firing continuously for 9 hours, roughly 1 shell for every square meter of the target area. Artillery didn't just kill soldiers, it obliterated landscape, creating moon-like craters that persist in French farmland today. The tank emerged as the war's most significant tactical innovation, representing a new philosophy of armored mobility that could break through static defenses. Early tanks were mechanically primitive. The British Mark I could barely outpace walking infantry and broke down frequently. But they solved trench warfare's fundamental tactical problem. Tanks could cross trenches, crush barbed wire, and provide mobile protection for advancing infantry. Aviation warfare progressed from reconnaissance curiosity to strategic bombing capability within 4 years. Early aircraft were essentially flying observation platforms, but by 1918, both sides were conducting bombing raids against enemy cities and industrial targets. The psychological impact of aerial bombardment on civilian populations would become a defining feature of 20th century warfare. The war's most profound innovation was in coordination and communication. Military operations involving millions of soldiers across hundreds of miles required unprecedented logistical sophistication. The development of military radio communication, standardized equipment, and coordinated artillery fire created the foundation for modern combined arms warfare. Chapter 5: Blitzkrieg, the revolution of speed and coordination. Between the wars, military theorists struggled to understand World War I's lessons. But Nazi Germany synthesized these insights into a revolutionary approach that prioritized speed, coordination, and psychological impact over traditional concepts of linear warfare. Blitzkrieg wasn't merely about having superior tanks. though German armored divisions were formidable. It was about creating a new paradigm of warfare based on information flow, coordination between different military branches, and the exploitation of enemy decision-making limitations. German forces in Poland covered 200 miles in 2 weeks, completing the campaign before Polish forces could effectively mobilize their reserves. The revolution lay in radio communication and tactical coordination. For the first time in military history, commanders could communicate with subordinate units in real time during active combat. Tank commanders could request immediate air support. Infantry could direct artillery fire onto specific targets. And aircraft could report enemy movements instantly to ground forces. The Wehrmacht created what we now recognize as network-centric warfare. The Battle of France demonstrated Blitzkrieg at its most devastating. German forces bypassed the heavily fortified Maginot Line by attacking through the Ardennes forest, terrain that French planners considered impassable for armored divisions. This wasn't just tactical surprise. It was strategic misdirection that exploited enemy assumptions about terrain, timing, and force concentration. In 6 weeks, Germany defeated a coalition that had fought them to stalemate for 4 years in World War I. German success resulted from superior information processing and decision-making speed. While Allied commanders relied on traditional hierarchical communication systems that required hours to coordinate responses, German units operated with delegated authority that enabled immediate tactical adaptations. Junior officers could exploit opportunities without waiting for higher authorization, creating a tempo of operations that consistently outpaced enemy responses. The integration of close air support revolutionized ground combat effectiveness. Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers functioned as flying artillery, providing precision fire support for advancing ground units. The psychological impact of Stuka attacks, particularly their distinctive sirens, created panic that often proved more valuable than their actual destructive capability. However, World War II also demonstrated the limitations of offensive innovation when faced with effective defensive technologies. British radar development enabled the Royal Air Force to detect incoming German aircraft formations, coordinate fighter intercepts, and husband their limited resources effectively. The Battle of Britain was won not just by pilot skill, but by superior information systems that allowed outnumbered defenders to be in the right place at the right time. The pace of military innovation is accelerating rapidly. Make sure you don't miss what comes next by subscribing to Timescope and joining our community of history and science enthusiasts. Chapter 6: Pacific Innovations, Naval Warfare's Transformation. The Pacific Theater introduced revolutionary concepts of power projection, amphibious warfare, and naval aviation that fundamentally altered strategic thinking about global military operations. Pearl Harbor represented more than a surprise attack. It was a demonstration of power projection capabilities that redefined naval warfare. Japanese carrier-based aircraft struck targets 4,000 miles from the Japanese home islands, sinking or disabling 18 American warships in 2 hours. This attack announced that aircraft carriers, not battleships, had become the primary instruments of naval power projection. The Battle of Midway 6 months later definitively proved this transformation. The Japanese fleet included some of the most powerful battleships ever constructed, yet the entire engagement was decided by aircraft launched from carriers operating beyond visual range of enemy surface vessels. American dive bombers sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers in a single day, fundamentally shifting Pacific naval balance. The era of big gun naval warfare had ended. Aviation-centric naval combat had begun. Amphibious warfare evolved into a sophisticated combination of logistics, engineering, and combined arms coordination. The island-hopping campaign required specialized equipment and tactics, purpose-built landing craft, amphibious vehicles, underwater demolition teams, and close air support techniques that could support troops fighting on beaches thousands of miles from major supply bases. The invasion of Iwo Jima demonstrates amphibious warfare's complexity and cost. The operation involved 70,000 American troops, supported by over 400 ships, requiring coordination of naval gunfire, close air support, logistics, medical evacuation, and engineering support across 36 days of continuous combat. American casualties exceeded 26,000, including 6,800 killed, demonstrating that even technologically superior forces paid enormous costs when attacking well-prepared defensive positions. Submarine warfare in the Pacific revealed the vulnerability of extended supply lines to underwater attack. American submarines operating in Japanese waters sank over 1,300 enemy merchant vessels, effectively strangling Japan's ability to supply its far-flung empire. The USS Tang alone sank 33 Japanese ships before being destroyed by its own torpedo, a reminder that even advanced weapons systems remained mechanically unreliable. Chapter 7. The Atomic Threshold, August 1945. August 6, 1945, represents the single most significant discontinuity in the history of warfare, the moment when human conflict acquired the capacity for species-level destruction. The Manhattan Project wasn't merely a weapons development program. It was the industrialization of scientific research on an unprecedented scale. Over 130,000 people worked across multiple secret facilities, including some of the world's most brilliant physicists, chemists, and engineers. The cost exceeded $2 billion in 1945 dollars, equivalent to approximately $28 billion today. This represented the birth of big science as a military enterprise, where theoretical physics could be transformed into strategic weapons through massive industrial coordination. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima released energy equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT, more destructive power than the largest conventional bombing raids of the war, delivered by a single aircraft carrying a single weapon weighing less than 5 tons. This wasn't just quantitative increase in destructive capability. It was qualitative transformation of what weapons could achieve. The strategic implications transcended immediate military applications. Any nation possessing nuclear weapons could potentially destroy any other nation, regardless of conventional military strength, geographical advantages, or alliance systems. Nuclear weapons didn't just change tactics. They fundamentally altered the strategic calculus of international relations. The bombing of Nagasaki 3 days later demonstrated that Hiroshima wasn't a unique demonstration, but evidence of industrial capacity to produce multiple weapons of mass destruction. American nuclear capability represented not just possession of devastating weapons, but the ability to manufacture them in quantity, a capacity that became as strategically significant as the weapons themselves. Nuclear weapons introduced unprecedented psychological dimensions to warfare and international relations. The concept of mutually assured destruction meant that major powers could no longer engage in unlimited warfare against each other without risking civilization's end. This created what strategists called nuclear taboo, political and psychological barriers against using weapons whose effects transcended traditional military objectives. The atomic bomb also established the principle that scientific research had become a critical component of national security. Nations that could attract and support advanced scientific communities could develop weapons that neutralized conventional military advantages. The nuclear age made universities, research laboratories, and scientific education strategic assets in ways that previous generations could never have imagined. Chapter 8. Cold War Innovations, the Permanent Arms Race. The Cold War transformed military innovation from wartime emergency response into permanent peacetime competition, creating continuous technological advancement driven by ideological competition rather than immediate survival necessity. Hydrogen bomb development represented another quantum leap in destructive potential. While atomic bombs measured their yield in kilotons, thousands of tons of TNT equivalent, hydrogen bombs were measured in megatons, millions of tons. The Soviet Union's Tsar Bomba, tested in 1961, produced a 50-megaton explosion, over 3,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. The nuclear arms race had entered the realm of geological-scale destruction. Intercontinental ballistic missile development eliminated geographical protection from nuclear attack. The Soviet R-7 rocket that launched Sputnik in 1957 was originally designed as an ICBM capable of delivering nuclear warheads to American cities from Soviet territory. ICBMs could traverse intercontinental distances in 30 minutes, compressing decision-making time to minutes and creating launch-on-warning policies that increased accidental war risks. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles added survivable second strike capability that made nuclear warfare even more catastrophic to contemplate. Nuclear submarines, like USS George Washington, could remain hidden underwater for months, carrying 16 Polaris missiles with nuclear warheads. Even successful first strikes couldn't prevent devastating retaliation, making nuclear warfare strategically irrational for rational actors. Precision-guided munitions began transforming conventional warfare by making individual vehicles and buildings viable targets for destruction. Laser-guided bombs and wire-guided missiles enabled surgical strikes that could achieve strategic objectives with theoretically minimal collateral damage. The era of area bombing was giving way to precision targeting that promised to make conventional warfare more discriminating and potentially less destructive. Reconnaissance satellites created unprecedented global surveillance capabilities that affected both military and political aspects of international relations. Nations could monitor enemy military preparations, nuclear testing, and troop movements from space, reducing uncertainty that might lead to preemptive attacks while simultaneously creating new vulnerabilities to anti-satellite warfare. Electronic warfare evolved as nations developed sophisticated jamming, detection, and communication systems. The electromagnetic spectrum became a battlefield where invisible signals competed for control of information flow, creating new domains of conflict that operated parallel to traditional kinetic warfare. Chapter 9. The Information Revolution, Precision and Networks. The 1991 Gulf War announced the arrival of information age warfare, where precision, coordination, and real-time information sharing created new paradigms of military effectiveness. Global Positioning System integration revolutionized navigation and targeting accuracy. GPS-guided munitions could strike targets within meters of their intended impact points, making individual buildings and vehicles viable targets for destruction. This precision reduced ammunition requirements while increasing tactical effectiveness. A single guided bomb could accomplish what previously required dozens of unguided weapons. Network-centric warfare created unprecedented coordination capabilities between different military units and service branches. Individual soldiers, vehicles, and aircraft could share information instantly, creating common operational pictures that enabled coordinated responses to developing situations. The traditional fog of war, confusion and uncertainty that characterized historical combat, seemed to be diminishing through superior information processing. Stealth technology represented a new approach to survivability based on information control rather than armor protection. The F-117 Nighthawk and B-2 Spirit bomber used radar-absorbing materials and carefully designed shapes to become nearly invisible to enemy detection systems. Stealth wasn't just about avoiding detection, it was about controlling enemy information and maintaining tactical surprise throughout operations. Real-time intelligence collection and dissemination transformed operational planning and tactical execution. Satellite reconnaissance, electronic intercepts, and human intelligence could be processed and distributed to operational units within hours or minutes, enabling rapid adaptation to changing battlefield conditions. Night vision technology and thermal imaging eliminated darkness as protection for military operations. Modern military forces could operate effectively 24 hours per day, maintaining continuous operational tempo that exhausted enemies who lacked similar capabilities. Unmanned aerial vehicles began fundamentally transforming the relationship between warriors and warfare. Early drone systems provided persistent surveillance capabilities that allowed military commanders to monitor enemy activities continuously without risking pilot lives. The psychological impact of constant surveillance began affecting enemy behavior patterns even when direct attacks were infrequent. Chapter 10: The Drone Revolution and Cyber Warfare. The 21st century has witnessed the emergence of two revolutionary warfare domains that challenge traditional concepts of military conflict: unmanned systems, and cyber warfare. Drone warfare enables persistent surveillance and precision strikes across vast distances without risking operator lives. A Predator drone operator in Nevada can monitor targets in Afghanistan for hours or days, gathering intelligence and conducting strikes thousands of miles from the battlefield. This separation of operator from immediate physical danger has psychological and strategic implications that military analysts are still attempting to understand. The proliferation of drone technology has democratized precision strike capabilities that were previously available only to major military powers. Commercial drones costing hundreds of dollars can be modified to carry explosives, creating asymmetric threats that challenge traditional concepts of military superiority based on expensive, sophisticated weapons systems. Swarm drone tactics represent emerging approaches to overwhelming enemy defenses through coordinated attacks by multiple small, expendable platforms. Rather than relying on expensive, sophisticated individual weapons, swarm attacks use numerous simple platforms that collectively achieve mission objectives while accepting individual unit losses. Autonomous capabilities in drone systems continue advancing toward full independence from human operators. Current systems require human authorization for weapon employment. But advancing artificial intelligence capabilities suggest future systems may operate with minimal human oversight. The implications for human control over lethal force decisions remain subject to intense ethical and legal debate. Cyber warfare has created an entirely new domain of conflict where computer code can cause physical destruction, economic disruption, and political destabilization without traditional military forces crossing international borders. The Stuxnet virus attack on Iranian nuclear facilities in 2010 demonstrated that malicious software could cause physical damage to critical infrastructure, proving that cyber weapons could achieve strategic objectives previously requiring conventional military strikes. Critical infrastructure vulnerability to cyber attack has created new national security concerns about power grids, financial systems, transportation networks, and communication systems. Modern societies depend on interconnected computer networks that can be targeted by adversaries seeking to cause economic disruption or social chaos without engaging in traditional warfare. Attribution challenges in cyber warfare complicate response decisions and strategic deterrence. Unlike conventional attacks where the source is typically obvious, cyber attacks can be conducted through multiple intermediaries, making definitive attribution difficult and potentially enabling attackers to escape retaliation. Social media manipulation and information warfare represent psychological dimensions of cyber conflict, where adversaries can influence public opinion, political processes, and social stability through coordinated disinformation campaigns rather than direct attacks on infrastructure or military systems. Chapter 11: The Terrifying Arsenal of Tomorrow. Current weapons development suggests that World War III, should it occur, would involve technologies that push the boundaries of science fiction into horrifying reality. Hypersonic weapons travel at speeds exceeding Mach 5, over 3,800 miles per hour, making them nearly impossible to intercept with current defensive systems. Russia's Kinzhal missile and China's DFZF hypersonic glide vehicle can change trajectory during flight, making their ultimate targets unpredictable until moments before impact. Hypersonic weapons compress decision-making time to minutes for intercontinental strikes. Artificial intelligence integration into weapons systems creates autonomous capabilities that can identify, track, and engage targets without human intervention. Current systems like Israel's Iron Dome operate with minimal human oversight, automatically intercepting incoming rockets and artillery. Future AI weapons may extend this automation to offensive operations, raising fundamental questions about human control over lethal force decisions. Directed energy weapons use focused electromagnetic energy to disable or destroy targets at light speed with unlimited ammunition as long as power is available. High-energy laser systems can destroy drones, missiles, and aircraft instantaneously, while high-powered microwave weapons can disable electronic systems without causing permanent physical damage. Space-based weapons represent the ultimate high ground for military operations. While international treaties prohibit weapons of mass destruction in space, conventional space-based weapons remain theoretically possible. Kinetic bombardment systems using tungsten rods dropped from orbit could deliver nuclear-equivalent destruction using purely conventional kinetic energy. Biological weapons enhanced by genetic engineering and synthetic biology could create pathogens specifically designed to target genetic markers, potentially creating weapons that could selectively target specific ethnic groups while leaving others unharmed. Advances in biotechnology have created new possibilities for biological warfare that transcend traditional chemical and biological agents. Quantum computing threatens current encryption methods while offering new possibilities for secure communication through quantum entanglement. Military communications in future conflicts may rely on quantum encryption that is theoretically unbreakable, while quantum computers could potentially break all current encryption systems. Electromagnetic pulse weapons can disable electronic systems across wide areas without causing direct human casualties. EMP weapons could potentially disable enemy military systems, civilian infrastructure, and economic activity without traditional kinetic warfare, creating strategic effects through technological disruption rather than physical destruction. Chapter 12: Human Factors in Technological Warfare. Despite advancing technology, human factors remain central to warfare's conduct and consequences. Though the relationship between human decision-makers and weapon systems continues evolving in concerning directions, decision-making time compression, created by advanced weapon systems, challenges human cognitive capabilities. Nuclear weapons can be delivered within minutes, requiring launch-on-warning policies that may force critical decisions faster than human decision-makers can adequately evaluate situations. Automated defensive systems may engage threats before human operators can assess whether responses are appropriate. Psychological impacts of technological warfare affect both operators and targets in ways that military planners are still learning to understand. Drone operators, despite operating thousands of miles from their targets, report post-traumatic stress rates similar to conventional combat veterans. The disconnect between physical safety and psychological exposure to violence creates new forms of combat trauma. Civilian vulnerability has increased as weapons have become more powerful and conflicts more total. Modern military forces possess destructive capabilities that could cause civilian casualties exceeding anything in human history. While precision weapons create temptations to conduct military operations in densely populated areas, training and human capital requirements for advanced military systems continue increasing, creating new dependencies on educated, technically skilled personnel. Modern warfare requires soldiers who can operate sophisticated electronic systems, interpret complex information displays, and make rapid decisions based on incomplete information from multiple sources. Ethical considerations surrounding autonomous weapon systems challenge fundamental assumptions about human responsibility for lethal force decisions. As weapons systems become more autonomous, questions arise about accountability, proportionality, and the appropriate role of human judgment in life and death situations. Information warfare targeting civilian populations can cause social disruption and political instability without traditional military operations. Populations subjected to sophisticated disinformation campaigns may experience social discord that achieves adversary strategic objectives without kinetic warfare. The increasing complexity of modern weapon systems creates vulnerabilities to technical failure, human error, and enemy interference that could cause unintended escalation or friendly fire incidents with strategic consequences. From medieval knights charging with lances to autonomous systems selecting targets with artificial intelligence, we've traced an extraordinary journey through human ingenuity's darkest applications. The pattern is unmistakable. Each generation's weapons would appear as magic to their predecessors, yet each generation faces the same fundamental challenge of controlling forces they've created. The weapons of World War III won't just be more powerful than their predecessors. They may operate faster than human decision-making, across domains we're still learning to understand, with consequences that persist far beyond any traditional conception of military conflict. We're approaching a threshold where warfare may become too fast, too complex, and too devastating for human control. The crucial question that extends beyond military history into the future of our species: As we develop weapons systems that can select and engage targets autonomously, are we maintaining meaningful human control over decisions about life and death? The technology exists to create weapons that need no human authorization to kill. But should such systems ever be deployed, which weapon system from our journey do you believe most fundamentally changed warfare's character? Was it gunpowder, ending medieval social structures, machine guns making traditional tactics obsolete, nuclear weapons creating mutually assured destruction? Or are we witnessing that transformation right now with artificial intelligence and cyber warfare? More importantly, where should we draw ethical lines around autonomous weapons systems? Should machines ever be authorized to take human lives without direct human control? What happens to concepts like proportionality, discrimination, and accountability when algorithms make targeting decisions? Your engagement drives these critical conversations forward, so hit that like button, subscribe to Timescope, and activate notifications so you never miss our explorations into the forces shaping human civilization. Next week, we're shifting from humanity's capacity for destruction to one of our deepest mysteries. Join us for the physics of time, past, present, and theories of the future, where we'll explore whether time travel is actually possible, why time seems to accelerate as we age, and what cutting-edge physics reveals about time's fundamental nature. From Einstein's relativity to quantum mechanics and theoretical possibilities of temporal manipulation, we'll journey to the very edges of human understanding about reality's most enigmatic dimension. Until then, keep your lens focused through the scope of time. And remember, understanding our capacity for both creation and destruction helps us choose which future we'll build. From the same species that gave us the atomic bomb and autonomous weapons, we've also created the space telescopes that peer into the universe's deepest mysteries, reminding us that human ingenuity can reach toward both destruction and transcendence. The choice, as always, remains ours. This is Timescope, where we explore the forces that shape our universe and our place within it. Thanks for joining me on this journey through humanity's most sobering innovations, and I'll see you next time as we unlock the mysteries of time itself.